Here's a strange story that came out today, and like I said, we were talking about kidnapping and how extraordinarily common it is. They don't all end like this, but this is actually more of a random femicide attack, it seems. It's not saying like there was a altercation or anything. It's really strange. It says the suspect was arrested in a murder of a California teen, so he went after a teen kidnapped from a car park in video. I haven't seen any video like where that happened, if they even show a video of this, but Andrea Vazquez was 19, was kidnapped during a random attack over the weekend, said the Whittier police. Anyway, it says a missing California teen has been found dead following a violent kidnapping. Vasquez has been kidnapped over the weekend during an attack that the Whittier Police Department previously described as random. They keep saying random, 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 and I'm just like, okay, I guess there was no altercation, and it's just this little male supremacist piece of crap that's like, I'm gonna go get a teen and do whatever and kill him. Like, just randomly with a boyfriend there, I guess. Detectives combing the area of Moreno Valley made the gruesome discovery on Monday night. At this time, it appears that Andrea Vasquez and her male companion were randomly targeted by a suspect at Penn Park. So I guess that would be really no different from a mass shooter. This is the thing I'm talking about with these ASPD son of a bitches. Like, this is such a serious problem, and it isn't just this, but this is part of it, and it's like a crapshoot of like who the hell's gonna do this kind of crap. Um, but Gabriel Sean Esperanza, 20, has been arrested in connection with the crime, and Mr. Esperanza, I guess it is facing charges of murder and kidnapping and is currently being held without bail. Authorities said that Vasquez was shot at the parking stall at the area Penn Park, and she was sitting in a parked car with her boyfriend, who fled the gunfire. So when he returned to the vehicle, he discovered blood near it, and Miss Vasquez was gone. And yeah, who would even expect that? I mean, what a and it reminds me of that guy from the mass shooter, the one, oh my gosh, what's his name? I was like, what's his name? Because they were making fun of him for a long time. Anyway, that one, I think Santa Barbara, that dude. It's reminding me a little bit of that mindset of that dude where maybe he like saw like a couple together, he's like, why isn't it not me? That kind of bull. And don't you guys think like these charges should be upped considering, okay, so there's these crimes like where, okay, they're like someone's having an altercation and like obviously nobody should be killing each other, but like let's just say there's these altercations, someone gets mad and someone wants to bring a gun to the fight, or somebody fights and someone dies, right? Like that there's something that tails it off, right? This type of crime is different. This is a hate crime on our gender, right? So why is it just like under this general category of like murder? Like I'm just questioning this because there's so many crimes like this where they keep talking about, oh, targeted hate crime, LGBTQ, targeted hate crime, people of color, but oh, go ahead and murder all the women and those are not hate crimes. Like this is like seriously a hate crime in the addition to it, right? And there's nothing that it's almost like this guy could be a total serial killer, right? Because there's no, that's what it's saying. There was no altercation. It's just like he came up and did that. How many times has he done something like that? And then nobody knew about it. Like he's 20. Like I'm saying, like these son of a bitches, they don't just randomly at a much later date, like typically on a much later date, like at 30 or something, and start just doing that. It's like this progression of them doing things like and it could involve animals, but sometimes it doesn't. I keep pulling that out. I go, and even if somebody did something to an animal, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a serial killer. Like, there's a whole thing to it, but like they do something. Like, there'll be some sort of like something like maybe they beat up their siblings, or, they were at school, they dropped out, they got kicked out, they were in the system. Like, there's going to be like this thing because that's the nature of these typical guys. But then there's ones like Trump, right? Where the schooling that they put him into is all abusive anyway. So when he's doing his best in like a military school or whatever, then they reward him, right? And they think, oh, he's the greatest socio ever because like he follows the rules and he's really crappy to everybody. He's perfect. Like there's this weird other dynamic which I've been trying to like cover like all those bases because it isn't just this. You'll see those guys, the military school guys, like Kevin Spacey's a military school guy too, I believe. And then you have Trump as a military school guy. And then, yeah, there was a number of stories. It'll go like both ways. I think the judge that killed his wife in Orange County, I think also it was like a military background family or something. I don't know. It was a more recent story. I was reading the background and I'm starting to you'll start to notice this pattern. Notice the patterns of all these different things. So that's one type of pattern and then you'll see that those perpetrators are um treated they act out differently. And I was saying like when they split off this thing and call them psychopaths, I'm like I think they're just sociopaths with like other issue things or something like that. But you'll actually see this difference in the different types because if you put like Kevin, Trump, and let's say that judge like together, right? Like how are they getting on in the world? They're not like going in and out of prison, right? Typically, they're like actually like manipulating themselves into society to where it's so normalized to be that type we're going to say type more normalized to be that type where everybody okays their terrible conduct, right? And then they harm and rape everybody and the public's like yay cool, we couldn't see a thing. And you could totally tell like I mean it's just screaming loud and clear like these people would do this stuff anyway. But then there's these type where it's like I call them just classic socio because that's kind of like the to me in my opinion when I'm reading this stuff, like somebody else that deals with this may explain this a little differently, but I'm saying for the general population that looks at this stuff, like they fit the typical classic description, like we're dropout, we're criminals, we're just gonna run out and do all these like thieving crimes, right? And they're very manipulative and that whole thing. But they all both types, like and there's more than two, but between these two groups I'm talking about, like they're the same technically, but it seems like that other group of them, they may be higher educated, and so they're not going to act as stupid as the dropout ones, right? And I'm thinking that that's the thing that separates a lot of them too, is their economic status and their schooling. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of questions in it. It's just like those ones are a lot more educated. And Trump is dumb as hell, though, you guys. He's just very manipulative, and then he doesn't understand. Like, it's really weird. Like, he's not a bright guy at all. But then you have Kevin, who is a very bright guy. And so they're both kind of playing off this thing about their high schooling, their scholastic achievements or whatever the bullshit is. But in that, they were part of, like, a military thing. And so as we're pulling out that this type of parenting or any type of thing like that on a kid is child abuse. So, then it's going to create this other thing, and then they're going to be like military parents and abuse their kids and do all this stuff, right? And then, so yeah, no, like beating the whole thing over there. And in fact, not to sidetrack off this, that there was another story that came out that was talking about how they still allow corporal punishment in like 23 states or something on children. I'm like, are you kidding me? But anyways, yeah, they're all a bunch of pro rapists because half that stuff was about actually the initial thing. I don't know when it first began, but the MO for a lot of that is child sexual abuse. But then also just physically abusing a kid. So I was kind of going through that thing where I was like, I think like I mean, not a huge portion. I think like a chunk of it, of parents doing that to kids, is doing it out of ignorance and not understanding that it's actually like sexual abuse. And even though you don't think you're doing sexual abuse, it's still sexual abuse because it will show up later in life as adults and they act out, you know what I mean? Like that whole thing. And I was saying that was one of the ones that it's like, okay, in a consensual relationship, and you guys do that or whatever. I mean, whatever, you know what I mean? But the stem off, like where it came from, was from abuse. And so from the abuse portion, yeah, and I had a whole bunch of God, throughout like starting from the early 2000s, like people started telling me all these things about it. And then when this happened, like so they'd say like I was in Catholic school, and then they had the, I don't know if it was a thing about like the nuns and their strict abuses and stuff like that, and then it totally warped them as an adult, right? And like I said, that's one of those ones where it's not technically bad unless they run around doing it to everybody without consent and all these things. But where it came from is definitely bad. And it was something that was um it started in that formative years thing when they're really little. So we're not talking like, oh, they were 14 and that's, they started doing that. Like who's spanking their kids at 14? But we've seen it. I've seen it on video. But when they started really young and then they were getting these abuses, and then it turned into some correlation with sexual behaviors or something like that. And then but then sometimes maybe if it doesn't do that, they're just being abusive, right? And this is how they're responding to abuse a kid, like, oh, you're not listening, so I'm gonna hit you, like hit you. So then when they become adults, you start sounding like Jermaine Jackson, right? Because he did this interview trying to defend his dad for beating him with a whip or whatever that, and you're like, didn't Whitey do that to the slave? Like, why are you like praising any bullshit like that? And that's not love. So that's very horrible, and you shouldn't do it to anybody else. But if they're sitting there okaying it and saying, oh, I came out fine, and, all this stuff, and then you start doing it to other kids, your own, whatever, this cycle of abuse goes on, right? So a lot of that stuff I was taking and all that information and comments on, how people were kind of responding to them getting beat up by parents or, abused in whatever way. But yeah, nobody wanted to stop beating their kids. And they think that, oh, because these kids aren't minding, we need to beat them up more. And it's like, no, the problems are because you even started out doing that. And, the authoritative thing, because kids want to like fight back. You know what I mean? That's just their thing. So no, it's really bad. But that's actually part of that authoritative thing and the military thing and all that stuff. And so all those guys over there got that. And I don't know much about Trump's dad, but that crap sounded also like a very similar thing to Spacey's story, like with this sort of authoritative parenting thing. So yeah, that's why I'm saying there's a lot of similarities, like in some aspects between those types over there and then this type over here. That's just um this is how their brain operates, you guys. I'm trying to explain it. It's really crazy. The We can get into the Britney thing. That thing is really bad. That is really bad. We all been like manipulated under that thing. That thing, that's for another clip, because there's a lot of stories coming out right now with some additional information. But regardless of the other stories coming out, nobody should be condoning any person beating the crap out of anybody. Like, regardless of what they want to say is their problem, they know what they're doing, and they need to get in trouble just the same way as anybody else would get in trouble. And I feel like in that particular story over there, it's validated by certain evidences, also past history, where I finally had to go back and go, what the hell, and I kind of figured out some of the things that were going on from the past, because they were Brittany and all them were part of a bully bunch of people, which I heavily followed, because I'm like, oh my God, these girls are the most atrocious thing, and particularly one in particular where that was my main focus. But again, that's another clip, because that thing, I tried to do it and it was like 2 hours long, and then I was discovering more stuff, and I was like, okay, now we need to collect this thing and shorten this down. But there is new stories, and I'll discuss it later, and why I originally even called one of them a sociopath. Oh, totally. I don't believe any part of what my assessment was of that is wrong. I think that what we got from it, from the future portion of it, was why that occurred. A little bit more of why that occurred. And then the problem with it is that these bully types actually never change. And That's another thing. But and I've been calling it out. Like, oh my God, these people, that's why I say, I go, don't even confront your bullies because they'll come back at you. But I have to call it out. Like, when I'm seeing like this behavior and then the public can't even get it right and defends all the worst things and didn't defend the things that they should have been defending. And it's just like, what the heck? Is your brains all backwards or what? It's like, you should have defended her when, they're like, let's lock her up and control her. You know what I mean? You probably should have, like, been there at that part. But I didn't even know what the hell was going on over there. Like I said, there was a whole other thing going on that I was paying attention to. But then the portions where you're getting stories that somebody literally did this other stuff, you don't defend that and go, oh, you poor thing. See, that's the thing that actually creates these guys right here. It some of that does, yeah. But here it could be a thing where he's a dropout. His parents are abusive. Maybe they're on drugs. Maybe he went through his system. Maybe like a whole thing to it. And they've been okaying this behavior of men the whole time. So they used to be like, boys will be boys, and now they just say all these different things about, oh, the poor guy has an addiction problem. I'm like, dude, addiction problems don't cause this. And the thing to note about addiction, with some people is that, okay, there's some people that they have just general addiction problems and they're not a sociopath, right? Like, they don't go around going killing people or raping children and doing all that stuff. Like, they might do some petty theft to, for their, addiction thing. But these other people, the reason why they're addicts, if you look into the ASPD thing, because they have other issues, right? So they're not addicts. They're not turning into monsters because they became an addict. That's not it. They're actually monsters before they became an addict. And so when they're doing drugs or anything like that, they're more freely able to go commit other crimes. Like, it makes them more comfortable. So you got that thing with Kevin, where he's like trying to use that as an excuse. Like, I don't know what AA is telling these people, and I hope to God it's not what I'm thinking, because I've never had to go through AA. People told me to go through what is it called? Not that other thing. I'm like that other thing for kids of alcoholics, or some bullshit. Al-Anon, Al-Anon, right? So I never went to that, but yeah. So I don't know what they're telling them, because I have heard some of these people talking like they'll say, "I am not my addiction," or the person that all this stuff, all this stuff. That would be true if it's somebody that is not an ASPD son of a bitch. But it's literally a different thing when you're dealing with somebody with that, because it's not that the drugs made them do those crimes. You know what I mean? Like raping kids or shooting people, doing these other like heavily criminal things besides something that you would normally do if you had an addiction, like, I might steal some money off this dresser because I gotta, that whole thing. Because that's sort of driven by like a need to go get something like that. But to go do auto theft and rape children and human traffic them out and go commit mass burglary, you know what I mean? Like those things, that's an excuse, and that has nothing to do with doing drugs. Seems like they don't even have a grasp on that. And I said I've been around so many addicts, like God, since I was a kid, right? So we're dealing with all this, and I could see that, oh, this group that was like, it was like a group of people that were like heavy, like some of the worst addicts you've ever seen. The nicest people ever, never once stole from me, weren't they tried not to be reckless in front of me when they had these problems, and they were lecturing me never to do it. So I was talking about this group of people, and I was like, yeah, isn't that kind of crazy? They were doing all kinds of things that would be like the worst, these addicts where you typically might hear a story where they go run out and steal a whole bunch of stuff, and do all these horrible things. But that's not the case here. And it was a group of them, so it wasn't like, oh, there was just one person, and so like my assessment of this would be off. No, it was a group of them, and then later I met a whole bunch of other ones, and none of them did that either, right? And then even much later, a whole bunch of them had the same issue again. None of them did that either. And then there was other groups of them where they didn't even want you to know they had that problem, right? So they would take off, and they might go around asking like, Could you lend me a couple of dollars? You know, some bullshit like that, right? They weren't out doing any of that. They didn't steal from me. They wanted to take off and not, drag anybody else down, right? That's actually a typical, I don't want to use the word healthy. It's somebody that's not having this issue right here. But the ones that have this issue right here will and are the ones that will turn into like doing horrible things like trafficking a child out. Okay, so that's not from addiction. That is from them having um that other things, right? So then as we're going down, that's all it says about this story. So the girl was found dead and there was literally no reason for it. So yeah, that is concerning. So yeah, these guys exist everywhere. These guys exist everywhere and they pop up, and this is concerning because this guy could have turned around and did a mass shooting, right? I mean, it's just the same mindset. It's the same person that would do that. So I'm like, they had this whole thing of like, we're just gonna go after the guns, and I'm like, yeah, but that still won't, like that's not gonna limit this type of behavior at all. And they don't want to tackle it, and so they want to still be like a whole bunch of male supremacists that goes and murders and femicides women and everything else, and not tackle what the hell's wrong with their men. And it's concerning because every day there's new little boys being, raised into the world, and they're teaching them some of the same things, and or doing all the or different abuses where they want to sit there and deny, oh, this is not abuse, and then later, then they're gonna have all these accusations, or whatever the case may be, and it'll be like 2 decades down the road. But the what else can I say about it? It's just, this is a horrible story. It's a scary story because it could be me, it could be you guys. We're just out hanging out at a park, and some piece of shit, this guy right here, because their parents are a piece of shit, is a destroyed human being. He's a monster. He's gonna just come out randomly and do some bullshit like that to our gender. It's a hate crime, period. Did he harm the boyfriend? No, I mean, he probably would have been fine with harming the boyfriend. But I guess his MO maybe was, I hate these women and I'm just gonna destroy her, and that's his mindset right there. He's never gonna be fixed, by the way. So I just want to point that out. He's not rehabilitatable. So this crap that them saying that they're gonna be rehabilitated, for the most part, like this guy won't be. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that he so like, let's say, no, I would never let this guy out, but let's just say like in 20, 30, 40 years, if they ever let him out, depending on what's going on in his head, the only thing that he could do is that he may not like he may not do this crime again, but his mindset of how he views us in the world is not changed. It will not change. And I've talked to a lot of people that have these issues, like different issues like this, and that mindset actually does not change. The way they shelf things in their brain of how they look at how they do things is nuts. And so I'm like, well, I mean, what more can you do at this point? It's like, if however they're thinking doesn't make them harm us again, or or whoever, um then I guess that's the best you could hope for. But it's still kind of iffy because that mindset right there is what made them do that in the first place. And so it's one of those things where you're just taking a major chance with, and they don't know enough. Like a lot of people that are just running up in here, oh, we need to do all this and that, and then just let them all out. This whole thing. They're doing some of the most reckless stuff and putting us all in danger because that they're indicators that a lot of the people that they've been letting out are not healthy in the brain still, and that's really concerning, because if you think like that, then it means that you're gonna blame your victims for you doing something, right? So how do you let them out still with that in operating like that, their brain? Some way have to blame the victim for them doing this. Their brains are wired wrong, you guys. That's why I keep trying to explain this. I go, it's quite a how it gets there, I don't know, like the whole process of, some people, like I can understand portions like where like You're totally tuned out emotionally from something that's never happened to you, and then you have no emotion to it, which is bad as is. But it's just if you don't experience something, then it's hard for you to comprehend somebody else's pain. Like, you could kind of get it, just you could kind of understand that, because I think we've all gone through this. Because I haven't been eaten by a shark, you know what I mean? I haven't got bit by a shark or something, so I mean, I feel bad for a person that has, but I've never had that happen, so I don't know what that trauma would be like, you know what I mean? So it's kind of hard sometimes for people to do that, but it's kind of your response to that will kind of show you who these people are. Because if it's somebody like that and they're just making fun of it and thinking it's funny, and then I don't know, like, there's a thing to it where it's like there's something wrong with you going on like that. Like, there was a story of, what was it? Ugh, God, the comment section. Oh, the one girl that was killed in the house in downtown, or in LA, over somewhere. Yeah, so the guy killed this lady, and they're just like, "Oh, just taking out the trash." I'm like, "You right there." You right there. Saying stuff like that. Um, yeah, you can flag them anywhere, and they'll sit there and try to be, "I'm just talking crap." It's not even funny. Like, why are you saying taking out the trash of some woman that just got murdered? So, you know what I mean? Like, that type of stuff. So you can see it. There's flags everywhere. Like, nobody should even be talking like that. It's not even. It's not funny. I mean, do you find anything humorous about that? It's not. It's not a bad joke, right? Now, there's been bad joke ones, and they need to take that seriously. But how is saying something like that a joke? That's actually talking about how they view our gender, and just generally, and it's not funny at all. So yeah, I'm just trying to make people more aware of that stuff, and then understanding what that MS thing is, because actually I was trying to explain it. Go, they're all abusers, and they were all abused, and that's why they became male supremacists, sort of thing. Something about that. But if you understand that, the whole thing about MS, then you would totally understand a sociopath, like, because that's what they are. So you would understand the difference between them talking about masking. Like, I'm just trying to tackle that topic because I was actually going through an autism video, and they're talking about how she's like, I had a mask, this and that. And I was like, oh yeah, that's totally different. Like, that's a, like, where they want to feel like they're in an in crowd or something, or fit in somehow and be cared for, like that thing. And I was trying to say on this other thing, that, like, that could be included with somebody that has ASPD too, because it could be a cluster of things. But generally speaking, the masks that they use, if they ever use them, I'm going to say if they ever use them, because I'm finding that a lot of them don't use masks at all. They're just being their shitty ass self, and the public is fine with shitty ass self. So there's nothing to mask, right? When the public's a shit face, I'm like, when their public is a shit face, like, you don't need to mask anything. The times that I see it, is when somebody's trying to manipulate themselves to a goal, right? And so they'll manipulate everyone to get to where they want to get, right? And what is the goal for them? Oh, they just want money, power, and attention, right? So they'll run over, people to do it. So the mask isn't like, oh, so people, the type of attention that they want is not the same as somebody that they were talking about with autism, where they want to be part of the world, right, without being looked at as a weirdo, right? So that's a different thing, because again, I've seen so many people going through that description, and they think that masking that they do, like, for, I just hide my feelings. I'm like, you have feelings. You should be happy that you have these certain feelings that these people don't have, or when they have them, they're not proper. So it's like, when you get sad, here's like an example. When you get sad, you don't go out and shoot up the place, right? When these people get sad, they sometimes will want revenge, and they will, like, literally take out the place, or they will start bullying you and blame you for making them sad, right? And in some cases, other people do legitimately make you sad. But you go out and physically harm a group of people or target, you know what I mean? Like there's an action there that's not healthy versus somebody else. It's like when I'm mad, you might get mad and just verbalize it, which is actually good to verbalize your anger. It's not wrong to verbalize your anger. But it's another thing to just keep spouting off and then screaming and yelling and chasing someone around. Like they act more like that. It's more unhealthy. It's like if you just think of the word unhealthy, like however they're doing that. And it's good to write out your anger. It's good to do all those things. It's good to talk about what you're angry at. It's good to do all these things. But these guys right here are just like, they'll look at this girl right here and whatever's going on in his brain. It could be a million things because he's a socio. He's like looking and he's just like, that evil like she's not with me and she should be with me and I hate her. Like you don't even know you don't know this stupid fool, right? And government, the thing that pissed me off about government on this stuff, they're like, why are people targeting you? I'm like, here's a case right here where a lot of men beyond him, will randomly target women, just randomly, because they got something screwy in their freaking head, just like this guy. And they will just look at you. It's like you could be this beautiful girl. Isn't she pretty? Yeah, there you go. Was. Now we have to say was. And he looks, and that is angering him in some way. It's like a trigger thing. And so then what's going on in their brain is, I got to do something criminal. I'm going to destroy. Like, this is them. This is ASPD. It's the craziest thing ever. And the fact that I understand it, like, it's just. But yeah, it's because I've had to deal with all these guys and a million different types, okay? So, but there is like, it's almost like there's classifications of them where it's like this type right here. And then in that group of people, like not all of them will kill, but they are all dangerous in a way that they will commit like rape crimes, which is a hate crime, on a bunch of women, right? And then there's these other ones that are like total bullies and they will bully you to hell. And if they had a chance, they probably would rape you because most of them are rapists anyway. So that's just part of their thing right there. So, then when you go into the Kevin Spacey, Trump side of things, where some want to classify this as psychopath, I'm just saying I believe they're just socios and they're higher educated, that crap. But anyway, whatever the case may be, this group of people tend to think out their crimes before they go just doing this crap over there, right? Because these guys are less educated. They tend to be. But this group, with the schooling people and everything else, they tend to think out and plot like they're evil a little bit more, right? Like they're far more calculated than this more sporadic type where it's like, I'm just angry right now and I'm going to do something right now and I'm going to lose my shit right now. You know that? But some of these guys, they do calculate too, right? They're calculating, I'm going to go shoot up a school. So they're thinking about it, right? So they're thinking about it. They're plotting it. So they're calculated too. So I don't want to confuse all that either because they do, but these guys tend to act out more sporadically, like they get mad and they just go do something. But this Kevin side of people, they think out first. They're like, well, what will I look like if I said this type of thing, right? And but for Trump, like I don't even know why. Like it's so weird that there's so much alike, but then yet the brain process is actually different than from what Kevin's goes on because Kevin just steals stories from other people and then he'll say something and then whatever works, right? Like, but he's thinking about it and he's trying to act prim and proper, which is so annoying. It's so annoying, but that's what he does. He tries to act like he's this good human and, I would never do something like that. And I'm really sorry if I did something like he does this thing. And deep down, he's sitting there thinking like, okay, I gotta like make sure I don't get busted. So how can I respond to like not look like a bad guy, right? So then he comes out with that, I learned this thing about kill them with kindness. I'm like, that's just creepy coming from you just generally. But he's trying to play that thing like I'm above it. I would never do that. People are gonna like pay for, trying to take me down. This type of shit. That's him. Trump, on the other hand, his brain activity is non-existent. Like, I don't know. It's very weird. It's that one's different. Because he just says stupid shit all the time. Like, I don't really understand. Like, he sounds like he could be autistic, in some way too. I don't know, but he, like, the whole thing is like, I really don't understand, like, why some guy would be upset because he lost all his money. Because for me, I know I'm just gonna get it all back. And it's just like, what? But when I read that originally, it was just kind of like, is he bullshitting me? He's trying to act like he's just, like, I don't know, like he's just talking some crap in a damn book, and but yes, that's how his brain operates because you hear him all the time. He's like, well, I stare at the sun. I was like, oh my God, when I was a kid, I was like, when I was a dumb kid, like, I remember, like, they're like, don't stare at the sun. I was like, I'm going to stare at the sun because you told me not to. No, but I don't, you know what I mean? But you're an adult. He's an adult, okay? And he's like, I'm going to stare at the sun. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, that guy, like, there's something wrong with him. His brain activity is different. He's definitely not the same IQ as Kevin. He actually, uh, could be a little, like, quite lower than the average. It's hard to say because he's so manipulative, but I don't know, not even really that. Because I'm trying to think about it, the brain activity is very different. It's kind of like, um, yeah, like he has some disability almost. Like he says that stuff, but then he's like, what? Like, doesn't anybody else say, like this kind of dumbness to it? Um, but then he's really calculated. Like he'll think about it. He's like, okay, if I tell like all these people that, this thing is going on because I know that these people will get riled up, then he'll just start spouting on bullshit. Yeah, you know what? They're target. He's going after the Corey Feldman thing, right? Because that's what he does. He does that same thing. And Corey there actually falls more in line with the other group of people, who are like the dropout types, those types. Like he actually falls more into that group, but it's strange because it's kind of a similar pool. Like they know, okay, if I say this to a group of people, this group of people, then they'll react to it, and then then they'll do all this bullshit, right? So Trump's doing that. So, but Kevin is definitely more calculated in the sense that he thinks out like what how are people going to view him. Like it's so interesting because I don't give it. And the other thing is with this group of the more dropout types, they typically don't really care what the group, like people think of them. They're very self-serving and they just don't, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, I don't care what if I'm accepted in this group of people. Those people are trash because of their ego. But again, since everybody's an individual, you might have somebody that's like, well, they should like me, and how dare them not like me? This other thing. But for me, like, I actually don't care, like, generally. I mean, like, I would probably care if they're people that I care about, like, don't accept me in a group of people, right? Um, but generally, I don't really care, but I'm not a sociopath, so I'm kind of like gauging, like, okay, I know how I feel in that situation, but I'm not out doing crimes like that. So I don't think they have that healthy thing of like how I'm thinking of it. Like I don't need to be a part of a group of people to feel like a whole person, or whatever the thing is. But some people do. Not all people do, but some people do. But these guys over here, depending on which one, because if you go into Chase Mara, like he's one of the most typical classic too, but he's also homicidal. But the typical type that's just like, I don't care, I'm a criminal. What? I'm a felon. Like, I don't really like his I don't really care attitude thing about it. So yeah, like there's so many variations to it, but yeah, you can kind of go lump them in. It's like, oh, all these ones over here, and then these more educated ones over here where They're a lot more calculated in how they do things. So, but they could both be equally as calculated. That's what I was saying. I go, there's really not a major split between it, other than what I've seen is the education thing. The education thing would be a huge thing because if you're just a dropout and you're an idiot and like you like you don't know how to read people, you just don't have a general intelligence about anything, then all of your crimes are going to suck because you're not very bright. But then if you're somebody that's more educated and you could think and plot out like more, sharply about, okay, I don't want this. That's the only thing that I really see like as a huge difference between like those people right there. By the way, none of this stuff, even for professionals, is even provable. I was like, you know what I mean? Like, other than I think is that they were talking about the brain activity. I was like, yeah, which is interesting because that even came up with the brainy thing, with the eye thing. I was like, yeah, I was actually on that eye thing for a long time because I go, yeah, that eye thing is freaking damn crazy, dude. And we're not talking about people who are born with. I just want to make it clear because there's some people that have that problem where like their eyes are kind of they're not like perfectly straight and so they can kind of veer off or be a little wonky or any sort of thing like that. That's some other thing. So don't think of any of that. We're talking about when like, okay, so if you see somebody angry, you don't need to hear a word from them, right? You look in their face and you look into their eyes and you could tell, oh my God, that person is angry. They're scary. They're mad. The socio, like the picture you take right here, this guy's dead to the world. There's a lot that you can read in that because it has something to do. It's something to do with their brain activity because they go, oh, when you see that, we were talking about the black eye thing. I'm like a bunch of psychopath thing. There was a thing going. That's probably like adrenaline, like something to do with that. But I don't know if that's what it is. But yeah, well, then that would have something to do with your brain activity, right? Something to do with something, right? With what's going on inside you. And if you go to a prison or deal with any of these guys that had really bad childhoods, they've been out on the street, maybe they murdered a bunch of people, very cold looks, right? Like you could just sit in a room with them and sometimes like you already know. Like I wouldn't want to be alone with this person because you're looking at how they're looking at you and it's if you pay attention to this stuff. Or you could when somebody's really happy, their eyes sparkle or whatever, you could tell like there's a inner thing there. Yeah, Brittany there, loco eyes. Yeah. So I was like, I don't know what she's doing. So here's a couple things. So apparently, maybe she's not medicating anymore. So the eye thing is showing activity. I don't know if it's it could be that manic thing. So you're seeing the mania. That's what I was thinking. Or she's just heavily on some other drug. But I don't think it would be that because I've seen a lot of drug addicts. I haven't seen their eyes looking like that where you're like, I think they're gonna bring out a knife on me, like that look. Yeah, I think that's a. I'm thinking. This is my opinion. I'm thinking that's a mania thing. Yeah, because she absolutely did not have that prior to this stuff. Absolutely not. I would be like psycho. Like what the hell? No, she did not. She did not. So that is something to do with what's going wrong in her brain. Totally. I mean, or it could be in addition to doing some other things that we don't know of that she shouldn't be. But I don't think so. But it could be a combo because there was this report out. I said I was going to do another clip. I will do a thing on it, but just to tell this up, they had this report out saying like Kevin thought she was on meth, and I was like, that seems believable that he said that. He was denying he said that. But I was like, I guarantee you he might have brought that up and he doesn't want problems, you know what I mean? Because I was like, yeah, we know Grifter Kevin. Like we could joke about him all day, but here's the real truth on that guy, okay? Like he's been taking care of the kids, he's been father, and she cannot be a mother to kids because she's dangerous. And he's obviously not dangerous, right? So I believe he may have asked that because her eyes look very different than they normally do and her actions, and so they were used to seeing her medicated from the time she got like committed and all that other thing. And so then as this happened, like you're questioning like what's wrong with her, is she on meth? Like I could totally see him saying that. I'm not even mad at it, but it's just like um I don't know. There was such I was gonna like kind of like go on with Kevin there for his bullshit with like give me more money, I want to move to Hawaii. But then and luckily I didn't, because I was kind of like thinking about this. I was like, the guy probably should get a other job, but regardless, he's taking care of these kids, and she's kind of targeting them, the sons, in a weird way. And it's like, now I don't know their parenting, so I couldn't like go, oh, Kevin shouldn't be like doing this type of parenting to where the kids are like going at mom or something. But we didn't know, right? It's just kind of those things. So I try not to like throw an opinion in on something I don't know, like completely don't know about. So, um, but yeah, no, if you stand back from this now, it's like, oh no, she's like completely attacking her son. And so I was like, yeah, I mean, if they don't think she's safe around kids, why would you think she's going to be safe around any other adults? Like, that's a crazy thing. Like, if they're not safe around kids, they're not safe around anyone. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's just the unfortunate thing, because somebody doesn't want to stay on their medications. They don't want to do any of this other stuff. And so then they need to fall where they need to fall. Like if they're being abusive, then they should go to jail and then get whatever treatment in addition to that, whatever. But there is more backstory on that one, because I was like, for the whole time, I'm kind of mad at myself because it was like because she manipulates and she comes off like I'm this like sweet girl, and it's like, okay, obviously I just didn't give her much thought, at this time, one time period. And then it was a hindsight thing where I went back and I was like, oh, okay. I don't even know why I didn't think about it. Like, or maybe when I was thinking about it, I was thinking like, maybe she's this like passive submissive type that doesn't say anything and was just going along with everything. But no, that's not the case. I don't believe that was the case at all, because somebody else made a comment when they questioned so and so. And they did not sound like they liked her at all. I noticed people were reading that differently, and I was like, nah, I don't think you would answer like that if it was not something like they want to say something, but then they didn't say what they probably wanted to say on that. So, yeah. And so there's kind of some things popping up, and I was trying to figure out like why nobody went and helped her, right? Um, no, I don't want to say like, oh, because nobody helps somebody, that must mean they're a bad person. I literally will make that clear. It does not necessarily mean that. But here, there's this thing. And prior to it, there was a lot of bullying going on. And then there was people that were just like, oh my God, because of her actions, right? But you see that that same person from then creeped out right now, right? That person was not a good person back then. She became okay when they medicated her. I mean, I don't know if I'd say okay. Like, she was plotting. She has the same mind as this guy right here. Mm-hmm. Yes. They don't discuss females that much. And I go, oh, I'm not going to be manipulated by this one. Because that one, yeah, totally. Um, in a really bad way. And I was like, wow, I would have never, like, you have to pay attention. You have to pay attention because you can miss it. That was one I missed. This one, you can miss it. Beyond, oh, I'm just mentally ill or something like that. They have an addition of something. And I was like, wow, oh, that explains it. That explains like everything, right? Like Kevin and all that, like even that, like we're focused on Kevin being a certain other way, right? But I'm not thinking this. I don't recall hearing him say any of that. But if you look at some of the other guys in this, not the ones later that are all criminal and stuff, I was looking at this one. I'm like, is he criminal? Like, what is this thing? They want to paint him out to be. That is a terrible. There's a, like I said, another clip, another clip. We're just gonna end that because I literally can go on about this to explain and have you guys like the opinion on it and show like this sort of history thing and this evolution, and it's like I don't know, it just went over my head. Um, Manipulation, because they're just good manipulators. They're good manipulators because who the hell was talking about them being like these evil bullies or anything like that, right? Because they didn't say much in the public. In the public, they were being a different way. I always learn something new though in this stuff. There's always new characters, right? That one, I was like, yeah, no, now's not the time to be supporting that crap because that was the thing. Like I was supporting them because um they could be who the hell they want online. Like, that's not the thing that the issue in this thing. It wouldn't matter if she cheated a million times or he cheated a million times or any of that other stuff. And I mean, obviously, that's not a good relationship. But but doing whatever online, like that's something that's not harmful to. It's not hurting the public. It's not hurting anybody else. But when you wake up, if you start doing this physical violence and being abusive, yeah, that's when you don't support that, and they need to get in trouble for it, regardless if that's a male or a female. And for that case in particular, yeah, it's a female. That's why I said it goes so weird. The public's so ass backwards. Ass backwards. They will go defend the abuser and go after the victim, and then I mean, maybe it's not even maybe it's just the same thing because they're still going after the victim and cuddling the abuser. She's very manipulative. I could not. I was like, oh, wow. So, yeah, and I think a lot of people are trying to do the right, like, there's a group of people that I think they're trying to do the right thing. And now's not, no. I was like, no, I'm not doing that stuff.